Are you ready to stop riding the emotional elevator of life? Are you ready to learn how to elevate your emotions that keep you psychologically traumatized or in an addictive behavior? You are in the right place. Here is your host, Sandee Byrd, trauma, addiction, life, and spiritual coach of the Emotional Elevator Show.
Welcome, everyone. I am Sandee Byrd, and yes, I am the host of Emotional Elevator on Inspired Choices Network. So if you're listening to me, live streaming me anywhere else, please come over here. I shared the link in all my platforms to come over here and join the chat room because tonight's episode is going to be interesting. But first, let me tell you a little bit about who Sandee Byrd is. I am not just a coach, because coach is so broad to say as I'm waving my magic wand, but it's my magic wand for change. Are you tired of your false sense of security or those limiting beliefs you have with yourself? Are you tired of doubting yourself? Are you unsure what the next chapters of your life is? Then I'm here to help. And I'm going to be having some programs coming out very soon. But first, I got to take a little trip. And then when I come back, it's time for me to dive in. But I am the person for you to come to when you're dealing with all these topics I have on this podcast, from trauma to uncertainty as to who you are these next chapters of your life, to grief and how grief affects us and how to change ourselves through the grieving process. I have. And understanding our children, and being better parents, not pushing our trauma onto our children or having our children take on our trauma. And if you've had many false beliefs that you thought were yours, but they're what was instilled in you, how you can change that. Also, do you really know what your purpose is in life? Or maybe you've been living the first purpose you had, and now you're starting to question it. Well, that's what I coach around, is getting to those limiting beliefs and letting them go, bringing on what you really want to believe, instilling the values that are meant for you, not what you might have thought that someone told you were your values, or figuring out what you want to do with your life for the next 50 years. See, as I've talked a lot of my show, I spent 2 years helping care for, not completely caring for, but helping care for my mother-in-law who had turned 100 and recently passed away. When now I get to recreate who I am. My children are grown. I have no more in-laws or parents. So the caring days, I still care. It's not what I meant to say, but taking care of people are done. My husband, he's independent. He does not need me. He wants me. He does not need me. And that is also another thing as a coach that I get us to change, is that word need. What do you need and what do you want? And how sometimes we limit ourselves around needs and we can open ourselves up with wants. Because the only things we need in life is food, shelter, and love. Those are only things we need. But it's what we want and how we want to live our life and how we want to be presented in the world is what a lot of us struggle with, because we think we need everything and we realize we don't, but we want them. And how do we obtain them until we can put ourselves out there to obtain them? Because that's what I've learned now in this second half of my life, because the first half, it's still there, but it's not who I am anymore. I have an identity, a different identity now. I know my identity now. I know my purpose. I know what values belong to me, what values were instilled in me that don't serve who I am. Same thing with beliefs. There's a lot of beliefs that were embedded in me and part of my DNA that I no longer accept. I don't accept as my beliefs. So that's what coaching does, and that's what my coaching. And yes, when I get back, I'm going to be diving completely in to talking about the programs that I'm going to be incorporating in my business. And also, I do some corporate programs as well. But tonight's topic is all about empowering children through their challenges. So let me read to you what this show is going to entail. Why do so many parents overlook the struggles their children face? Why do we dismiss their pain and confusion when it comes to their mental health, identity crisis, or discovering their sexual orientation? Why don't we take the time to get on their level to study or read about their experiences when they're suffering from anxiety, navigating a neurodivergent identity, facing an identity crisis, or grappling with unhealthy feelings? Why do we dismiss their struggles when they are our children? The very beings we are meant to love unconditionally. So in this episode, I, Sandee Byrd, will dive into the topic that affects countless families, but is often overlooked or misunderstood: how parents engage with their children's emotional and psychological struggles. I, too, as a parent, overlooked my own kids' struggles until I realized I was facing those struggles myself. I was imposing my own false beliefs on them and not getting the help I needed. After working with several clients who were navigating their adult children's mental health and identity crisis, I realized I too was struggling to understand my own challenges and those of my children. The insight led me to explore ways to help myself and others engage more deeply in understanding our children's identity crisis, anxiety, and the complexities of navigating neurodivergent identities, aiming to connect with them on their level and foster mutual understandings. So that's what tonight's show is all about. A lot of people think it's just about the neurodivergent, but it's also about some even things I have not struggled with my children, but clients have struggled with: the identity crisis or the sexual orientation crisis that their children are facing. And when are we going to stop trying to impose ourselves on our children and how we were raised or how we were treated in society, and allow them the freedom and empower them to speak up for themselves? See, this journey started with me, and she's going to come on one of my shows, and hopefully my one son will come on this show to talk about his struggles. I wish I could tell you how many years ago. I'm going to say it was 6 or 7 years ago. My daughter and I got into a very heated argument because I kept trying to tell her, "You're following in my footsteps, and I don't want you to follow in these footsteps." And she said, "Mom, when are you going to shut up and listen to me?" And I felt, how dare you disrespect me? We didn't speak for almost 2 years after that. Honestly, we did not speak. She struggled. She stole things to make ends meet. She was struggling. She was on her own. And as a mom, hearing that, ooh, I'm getting emotional. I struggled through that. But at the same time, I was like, how dare she disrespect me? But when we came back together, I gave her the freedom to speak up, because not only was my daughter dealing with her own trauma, she was also dealing with somewhat of an identity crisis because, as I spoke about, she is multicultural. And I never understood what it felt to deal with racism. I never understood. I do understand what it feels like not to fit in certain groups, but to really not fit in your own skin. not to fit in. Okay, I'm not black enough and I'm not white enough, but I'm really not Hispanic, but that's what I look like. She is part Hispanic, but that's what I look like, but I don't even fit in with them. So think about that. But it's taking the time to shut up and listen. Also, understanding I have 3 children now that have ADHD, and they're each different. And now learning myself recently that I am ADHD and I am different. And learning to listen to them and their struggles. Because I used to trigger my oldest son, and I finally said, I'm never going to know until you tell me. So one day he blatantly said, shut up, Mom, and listen. And I did. And I worked with a couple of clients. I'm going to say this, a couple of clients that they were struggling with their own children. One was an adult child, one was a teenage child. And they were struggling with why don't they listen? And I said, do you listen? So that's the biggest thing that this topic is about tonight is when are we going to listen and learn the struggles our children go through? Because they're struggles. And working in places when I was in management where we're forcing these children who have social anxiety to have a job, I understand that we want them to be in society, but understand what is it going to take for them to work? Understanding why do they have social anxiety? What's creating the social anxiety? Getting down on their level and learning what it is instead of just pushing, well, I had to work at 16, you're going to work at 16, but not understanding they're different and that maybe they're not being understood, or maybe they don't comprehend the same as you did or other children do. And that's what tonight's topic is really all about, is when are we going to empower our children? But it takes us to listen and to learn what it is to empower them. And I have been a couple of places where the topic has come up about their child with ADHD, and my husband or my wife doesn't understand. Well, what are they doing to understand? Are they joining support groups? Are they talking to other people? Are they trying to understand? No, they're not. They're just demanding that they listen or that they do things this way. That's not the right thing for that child. And I'm talking not just school-age children. I'm talking adult children. We have grown up so much in societies where it's disrespectful to speak up to our parents. I didn't, but I did a couple of times as I got older because I didn't need to live with my mother. But at the same time, that's not when we should be listening to our children, especially when they have struggles. I did have struggles in school. I did have some struggles with learning, but it was just do the work. It'll be so much easier if you do the work. That didn't make sense to me. And I'm now learning that each one of my children had different levels of learning. And sometimes I based one of their learning skills for all of them, but they were all different. And having clients with multiple children and say, my son, he's so gifted and he's so talented. And my daughter, she's just all over the place. Are you learning your daughter? Are you trying to get to know who she is? Because even though they have the same DNA, they're 2 totally different people. Think about that. They're 2 totally different people, but yet we expect them because they have the same DNA to be exactly the same, and they're not. And that's what tonight's show is about, is when are we going to empower our children? Because they're our children until the day we leave this earth. And then they're still our children. But think about that. They're still our children. When are we going to empower them to stand up, speak up for themselves, to be individuals? They can't be if we don't first give them the power as their parents. Because when we don't stand up and allow them the freedom to also stand up for themselves, we're not giving them power. We're taking that power away. But it is time for our first break. I, of course, am Sandee Byrd. And if this conversation enlightened you and you want to sit down and have a connection conversation with me, I'd be happy to. You can reach out to me like on all my social platforms, Sandee Steenstra Byrd, Sandee Steenstra Byrd RVA on Instagram, Sandee Steenstra Byrd on LinkedIn, any one of them, or send me an email. I do have an email with an emotional elevator, but also my email, Sandee Byrd, with those two E's, BYRD, coach@gmail.com. And let's get on a connection conversation, because this is a topic that can change the course of the world we live in by empowering our children with the tools they need to survive in this world. So let's go to that first break.
Are you living a life of psychological trauma or suffering from an addiction? Are you ready to learn new techniques to elevate your emotions without sustaining or obtaining them from substances that are not good for your mind or body? Then continue to tune into Emotional Elevator with trauma, addiction, life, and spiritual coach, Sandee Byrd, where you will learn techniques to elevate your emotions that don't require a magic pill, food, or impulsive behavior. Listen to Emotional Elevator with Sandee Byrd, Wednesdays at 7 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Central, 5 p.m. Mountain, 4 p.m. Pacific, on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com.
Are you a subject matter expert? Are you here to share your expertise with an audience waiting to hear from you in only the way you can deliver? Are you ready to have your voice amplified across the airwaves? Inspired Choices Network has a global radio platform streaming to millions of people across the world. Professionally produced and supported by an accomplished team every step of the way, you can broadcast from anywhere in the world, knowing your voice matters, and we ensure it is delivered with ease and efficiency. Eager to hear your message, the world awaits. Contact us today to become an Inspired Choices Network radio host. Email become a host at inspiredchoicesnetwork.com.
This is Emotional Elevator with Sandee Byrd. To participate in this program, join the live studio audience in our chat room at inspiredchoicesnetwork.com. You can also send an email to sandy@emotionalelevator.com. Now, back to the program.
Well, welcome back. I am Sandee Byrd on Inspired Choices Network, and this is the Emotional Elevator. This is Emotional Elevator. It's not called the, but this is the Emotional Elevator. Anyway, it says email me at sandy@emotionalelevator.com. You can email me there, but you can also email me at Sandee with those two E's, Byrd, coach@gmail.com. But as I think about this topic and as I have my magic wand, like I always tell everybody, if you could change one thing, that's what I like to use in my coaching. If you could change one thing, as I look, squirrel moments, shiny object, but if you could change one thing, what would it be? And as adults, there's a lot that we say now, oh, I wish I was prettier, I wish I was this, or I wish I was that. What if we change that within our children and listen to them and dove into these insecurities that we have as adults that we want to work on and changed it for our children now? Because that's what this show is all about, is empowering our children, allowing them to have the squirrel moments because there's a shiny object, allowing them to look out the window because Wow, there's a squirrel. It's got a big nut. That did not sound appropriate. Sorry. But, allowing them that freedom to be who they are. Mom, I got to get out and run around before I do my homework. No, you come home from school, you do your homework. Learning them, listening to them. I don't feel comfortable in my skin. Why don't you feel comfortable in your skin? What is it about being in your skin that you don't feel comfortable? I had a job at 16, so therefore you're going to have a job at 16. And then they get fired. Why can't you just go along with the rules? Finding out what it is about the rules that they can't go along with. Having those deep conversations with our children. We don't do that. Is it because we're too busy reaching that golden nugget, that money that we think if we make this million that our kids are going to be happier? If we spoil these children, they're happier? They're not. They're just getting more complex problems because we're not giving them the opportunity to learn them, to listen to them, to value them. And that's what this topic tonight is all about, is empowering our children through their challenges. Because when I think about the world today, would I want to be a child again? Abso-effing-lutely not. Because there's too much trauma being put on them, and there's too much not listening. We've been screaming for years that we are all different and we learn differently. And yet you go to corporate America and you become a trainer. I've been a corporate trainer. And I teach people that everyone's got different learning skills, but yet they still give us the same guidelines, the same teaching instruments, same time frame. Nope, training's 4 days, only 4 days. Well, if they don't get it in some places, then let them go. Instead of trying to figure out why didn't they get it. And as parents, we should be empowering them. And that's what I talk with my clients who struggle when they come to me and start bringing up their children. Well, I just don't get how come they don't listen to me. Their life would be so much easier if they just listened to what I had to say. When are you listening to them? When are you paying attention to them? I don't understand where Sally Sue got this identity crisis and now wants to be Sam Duncan. I don't know where that name came from, but Sam Duncan. Did you find out? Have you had that conversation? Have you got down on your own child's level to understand? They say my kid's ADHD. I don't see that. They always have their desks methodical and neat and everything that's so organized. Yeah. Doesn't mean they're learning any better. My child's a class clown. I don't understand why they're a class clown. Why can't they just sit still? Did you ask them? I am at fault too for a lot of this, but I also advocated for my children in schools. I also went to many and said, what are you doing to incorporate the ADHD into the day? Extending and doing block classes might not necessarily be the fit. So what do you do for these children? So it's getting to learn the diagnosis. Stop just putting them on. Everyone knows I'm not a big advocate for medicine, but I am a child from the medicine field. But what I'm trying to say is it's not all about just giving them a magic pill. You might as well just wave a magic shiny wand at them and say, poof, what can I change? It's not going to change anything. The pill just suppresses what it is they're feeling. When are we going to decide as parents to get to know our children, understand them, learn, and stop learning what the textbook says that it should be, because it's not. And like I say, my two sons, very neat, very organized, everything's got to be, and I'm not saying OCD to the extreme, abusive OCD, but I'm saying like they have their routines and structures. They like their routines. Now, my daughter, on the other hand, she is organized chaos, and she was in school. She was the one who the teacher would get her maybe behind my sons and go, oh my gosh, she's brilliant, but she's a mess. My husband and I never understood how she was such a mess when I am such a clean freak. But if I could turn my camera around in my office, everything above the desk looks really good. Right now, below the desk, organized chaos. But I realize that there's a difference. There is a difference between all of us. We all have been diagnosed, same exact thing, but we all are different. So I've got to learn different. It's the same thing as having conversations with our kids. Normally, when you have more than one, you can't have the same exact conversation with child one as you do with child two. And I try to explain that to clients that I work with. I'm struggling with my son or I'm struggling with my daughter. Well, how are you struggling? What is it? And trying to get what is it that you need to work on so that you can have these conversations. Understanding them, getting to know them, getting down on their level, not expecting them to rise to our levels. We got to get down. We got to understand. And we got to stop taking these textbook diagnoses because, as we all know, medically, we're talking more mental, psychological, different than medically. If your child is diagnosed with diabetes, you ask, do they need to be on a pump? Do they need to be injected? Should they be on a pump? Are they going to take a pill? Is this diet? Do they need exercise? You're asking all these questions. But when they're labeled with a neurodivergent or having a high IQ or something different, we don't ask these questions. Okay, is there a medicine? What medicine can we give them? Not, okay, let me find out. How do they need to learn? Where's their struggles at with learning? What do we need to work on? We don't do that when it comes to that. The same thing as when they're going through identity crisis. Do we sit down and say, okay, I brought you in this world as a girl. You feel like you want to be a boy. Why do you feel like you want to be a boy? What does it mean? What are you feeling? All of this. Don't try to change them to fit your mold. Try to understand them to make their own mold and empower them. Because a lot of parents are out here fighting for their children, but don't understand what they're fighting for and about. Give your children the freedom and empower them to help you fight for them. Give them the empowerment and freedom to speak up for themselves. Hey, teacher, I need to go run around the block for a minute. Can I? I feel anxious right now. Can I walk away? But not raising their hand in a class and having to say things that they might get teased about. And if they do get teased about, empowering them to feel good about the way they feel, to make them not feel like they're outcasts or not being understood. Because in order for them to feel like they're going to be understood, they have to feel like they're being understood at home. And that is not just for these children in school and in colleges. It's when they're adults. Mom, Dad, you never listen to what I have to say. Well, you never listen to me either. You're right. They are exactly right. You never listen to what they have to say. And stop comparing them to other people into society. Just because Sally Mae's son went through the change doesn't mean that your daughter, Bobby Joe, is going to go through the exact same thing and feel the same things. That is not true. It's the same thing with the gay community as children and as adults. We want to ban them because of our beliefs, but we don't want to understand their beliefs. We don't want to understand why they feel the way they do. We need to start listening to our children. We need to start allowing to have these conversations, allowing our children to be disrespectful to us and say, shut up and listen. Sit there and listen to me. Understand me. Look at this TikTok. Look at this Instagram post. Look at this. Read this. Stop. And working with clients that come to me now and talk about their children, and I'm working with them, but it's something within them that they're struggling with. And that's why they can't have these open conversations. And it doesn't mean taking care of your children in a financial doesn't change the challenges. If you want to compensate your children through their challenges, you're not listening. You're not learning your children. You are just allowing them to not have a voice, allowing them not to feel freedom, allowing them not to believe in themselves, giving them insecurities, giving them lack of self-confidence. So it is already time for our second break. Wow, I just dove in on that. So if you want, if anything you listen to strikes a nerve, makes you want to have a conversation with me, feels the want to go, I hear you, and I want to understand my child, whether they're an adult, young child, reach out to me at Sandee with 2 E's, Byrd, B-Y-R-D, coach at gmail.com, or on any social media platform, Sandee Steenstra Byrd, RVA on Instagram, Sandee Steenstra Byrd, or Emotional Elevator on Facebook, or Sandee Steenstra Byrd on LinkedIn. I'm out there on YouTube, all of them, but to have conversations with me, reach out there, because these are conversations that are meant to be had. And I'm talking to someone out there who is going to listen to this or is watching me right now that's saying, I get it, but I don't know where to start. Start with me. Let's get on a connection conversation and let's start diving into what is it you need to change about yourself to be able to shut up and listen to your child. But let's go to that break, because you're listening to me, Sandee Byrd, on Emotional Elevator on the Inspired Choices Network. And if you are live streaming me somewhere else and you want to ask a question, come over here on Inspired Choices Network. Join the chat room. Have a conversation. So let's get to that break.
Are you living a life of psychological trauma or suffering from an addiction? Are you ready to learn new techniques to elevate your emotions without sustaining or obtaining them from substances that are not good for your mind or body? Then continue to tune into Emotional Elevator with trauma, addiction, life, and spiritual coach, Sandee Byrd, where you will learn techniques to elevate your emotions that don't require a magic pill, food, or impulsive behavior. Listen to Emotional Elevator with Sandee Byrd, Wednesdays at 7 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Central, 5 p.m. Mountain, 4 p.m. Pacific, on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com.
How wonderful would it be to carry your favorite Inspired Choices Network host with you throughout your day? Well, now you can. Inspired Choices Network now has its very own mobile app. Our free app offers live streaming shows, along with thousands of podcasts and TV episodes. Our shows cover a wide variety of topics. Whether you're waking up with us, carrying us through the day and taking us to bed with you. We're always here for you to enjoy. We're easy to find. Just search for Inspired Choices Network in the Apple App Store or Google Play Store.
This is Emotional Elevator with Sandee Byrd. To participate in this program, join the live studio audience in our chat room at inspiredchoicesnetwork.com. You can also send an email to sandy@emotionalelevator.com. Now, back to the program.
Well, welcome back, everyone. As I've been diving into this show tonight, I want to let you know if you really want to challenge anything that I've been talking about, please reach out to me at Sandee with those two E's, Bird, coach@gmail.com, Sandy@emotionalelevator.com. Anything that you ever want to challenge me on, please do, because I would love to have more conversations that I have on here to challenge people to think differently, to approach life differently. Because as I talk about, I am a coach. I'm designing these new programs to engage life and to unleash your authentic self, to start forgiveness in your heart, and just to become the person you want to become. Because as I say, I really started embracing my life and changing it for the better, and understanding all these topics I talk about has made me a great person that I am. And now I can talk about it and give voices to those that don't feel they have a voice. And as a coach, that's what I walk hand in hand with you and hold you accountable. And as someone told me, I want to hold your feet to the fire of desire, because we all desire a change in life. And like a lot of my shows started because I spent 2 years helping care. I'm trying to see how I should properly word this, for my mother-in-law, she passed away just last month at 100 and a half. And through caring for her, I took some steps back, but I also realized at 100 and a half, I am 55. That leaves me 45 years to live the life I desire. And I've held my feet to that fire. And I can help you hold your feet to the fire of desire and change. Let go of those false beliefs that were embedded in you that you really have taken on, but you don't feel, your body has that icky feeling from. Or values that really aren't your values, but you thought they were. Or the purpose. Maybe you lived your purpose in the first part of your life, or maybe you really don't know what your purpose is. And how can you recreate your life after being a caregiver for 50 years of your life, or 50 plus years of your life? And how to stop being a caregiver. Because now that I think about it, I've spent 55 years being a caregiver. From my mother, to my children, to relationships, to my mother-in-law. And now I'm free to be me. And I want you to be free to be you. But today's show, or tonight's show, is all about empowering our children through their challenges. And what I've dove in a lot is talking about taking time to shut up and listen to your kids. It's about getting down to their level to listen and to learn what it is that will empower them. Every child is different and they learn differently. Our children cannot be individuals unless they are trying to be, if we don't empower them. Who are they really going to be empowering? And as adults, how are they ever going to feel that they can stand up for themselves if they can't with their own parents? That's where the struggle lies. Think about all the things that we want to unpack. All the things I wanted to unpack when I started my journey in my 40s. all the things I wanted to unpack. What if my children never had those to unpack? What if I had already unpacked mine before I had my children? But what if I gave them the ability to unpack? Maybe I would have unpacked mine sooner and not impacted mine onto them. Think about that. If I would have unpacked my luggage, maybe they would have never had luggage to unpack. Because here's the thing, as our children are getting more and more complex, children are facing more and more than they've ever before. School shootings, I could sit on something about that, but I'm not going to. Think about that. What do you think gives some of these kids the social anxiety? What do you think is impacting our kids every day? And maybe if we took the time to learn our children, these situations would not happen. Think about that. If we took the time away from focusing on our businesses, focusing on our lives, focusing on making sure we spoil the children, by spoiling them, we're not learning them. We're just packing. We're packing the luggage on them. But we're buying them shiny, the best looking luggage, but we're loading that luggage with a bunch of crap that they don't need. So let's start focusing on learning our children and allowing them the freedom to tell us to shut up and listen. Or when are you going to learn? I am not the classic ADHD child. I'm not the classic autism child. I am dealing with, I don't know if I'm really a girl or a boy. Or I don't like boys. For some reason, I'm attracted to girls. That's just not right, is not the answer. Asking the questions. Why do you feel like you're a boy and not a girl? Why do you like, what does it mean that you like girls over boys? You don't have to understand it. Just get to know it and stop hiding behind your beliefs, because your beliefs are taking advantage of your children. We are taught a lot as moms to love our kids unconditionally, but we don't do that. We don't love our children anymore unconditionally. We love them with conditions. As long as you fit in this box, as long as you behave in school, as long as you learn like Johnny, as long as you're like the Jones next door, as long as you only like boys because you're a girl, as long as you wear dresses because you're a girl, and you got to play with Barbies as a girl. No, you can't kick a football. No, you can't do this. When are we going to stop doing that to our children? Well, in the Bible it says, I'm not going to get on that tangent. And also allowing our children to have political beliefs. That too is another big impact. But that's not what we're talking about. We're not talking about religious or political, but I challenge you, if you want to have the connection conversation off this. But that's what I'm saying. We are conforming our children. We're not learning who they are. We're not empowering them through their challenges. And like I said, I worked in businesses. I was a manager in businesses. That's what gives me the expertise with a lot of the topics, because I've seen it all. I was just talking about that today. I was a manager for 30 plus years. I've seen all this. I led with compassion. But it's when you see children with social anxiety to understand, what is it socially that gives them the anxiety, instead of just saying, you have to have a job because I had a job. Maybe that's what's giving them that social anxiety. And understanding why they can't go to work, understanding why they can't function, understanding why they're scared of their shadow, asking the questions. What does it mean when the teacher calls you up and says, your child just won't sit still in school. Instead of just saying, okay, we'll get them tested, understanding what that testing means. Don't just say, okay, what can we prescribe them? I'm a parent, I fought it with most of this. But now that I've embraced the challenges, I'm giving my children the freedom to speak back to me. Because there was a lot of challenges that I didn't even imagine that they were going through. And now working with clients, and they're talking about how the first thing they come to me is talking about why I want to change for my children. No, you need to change for yourself first, but what is it about your children that you feel the desire to change? Well, this, that, or the other. Well, have you really talked to your children? Have you even had these conversations? Because this is the next generation, and we need to empower them. Instead, we're impacting them. And that's a big difference. We need to give them the sense that their beliefs are valid. Their values are valid, even if they don't line with ours. Their learning is going to be different, even though they are our DNA. And if there's more than one child in the household, they are going to be different. And they need to be treated different. They can't all be treated the same. They need to be talked to differently. They need to be treated differently, and you need to learn them differently. And we need to stop trying to spoil them and give them whatever they want. It's not doing anything to prepare them for life because you haven't learned them. You haven't given them the tools for life. And the only way they can have those tools is by learning them. And it's not sending them to therapists. I'm not against therapy. I'm in therapy. It's not doing that. But it's aligning them with the therapist that's going to give them the empowering tools with their parents to help them in life. A lot of times we blame the teachers because Johnny didn't learn. No, what are you as a parent doing to help Johnny learn? Do you understand how Johnny learns? Oh my gosh, just blowing through my show. Before you know it, it's going to be time for the ending credits. But anyway, you're listening to me, Sandee Byrd. I know this is a very big topic on Emotional Elevator on the Inspired Choices Network. Like I said, if you want to have a connection conversation, or if you just feel that something I said struck a nerve with you or makes sense to you, reach out to me at Sandee with those two E's, Byrd, BYRD, coach@gmail.com. You can follow me on any social media platform, Sandee Byrd, Sandee Steenstra Byrd, RVA on Instagram, Sandee Steenstra Byrd on Facebook, and Sandee Steenstra Byrd on LinkedIn. And we can have conversations around this. Because next week, I'm going to dive into the same topic, but in the workplace. Because this topic needs to be addressed in the work environment when you have these adults going into the work environment that have neurodivergent traits, who have identity crisis, who have all of these things that I've been talking about tonight. As parents, we need to understand it too in the workplace. So we are going to go on that break before my show is over. So let's get to that break.
Are you living a life of psychological trauma or suffering from an addiction? Are you ready to learn new techniques to elevate your emotions without sustaining or obtaining them from substances that are not good for your mind or body? Then continue to tune into Emotional Elevator with trauma, addiction, life, and spiritual coach, Sandee Byrd, where you will learn techniques to elevate your emotions that don't require a magic pill, food, or impulsive behavior. Listen to Emotional Elevator with Sandee Byrd, Wednesdays at 7 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Central, 5 p.m. Mountain, 4 p.m. Pacific, on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com. This is Emotional Elevator with Sandee Byrd. To participate in this program, join the live studio audience in our chat room at InspiredChoicesNetwork.com. You can also send an email to sandy@emotionalelevator.com. Now, back to the program.
So, welcome back. Again, if you're not watching me, but you're listening, I have this magic wand. And this magic wand is what would you like to change within yourself to empower your own children, empower your grandchildren, empower your nieces and nephews, empower your students, empower your associates, empower children who are facing the challenges in their life. What would you do if this was a magic wand? Would you try to change them and say, poof, they're changed? Because that's not going to help. The empowerment is to get down on their level and learn how to empower them, learn who they are, listen to them. Stop trying to tell them how to be. Listen to what it takes for them to be. Because as a coach that works with older individuals who want to change all this packed on baggage, we're just packing it on the next generation and the next generation. So let's start unpacking the suitcase by empowering our children today and realizing that the world is changing and evolving. There's a lot of diversity. There's a lot of multicultural children out there that are facing challenges. And as a white mom who raised multicultural children, I did not understand about the racism, and they could not talk to me about it. But now I understand what they went through, and it's hard to face. But you know what? Shutting up and listening, and maybe if I would have listened to them more as children, I could have understood more why they were having these feelings of insecurity. ADHD, it's different for all three of them, and it's different for me. And learning it and understanding it and not realizing what the definition is. That's the problem. You're willing to ask questions when it's a medical. My kid has cancer. Okay, what's the treatment? What's the plan? What's the prognosis? Blah, 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 blah. We ask 20 million questions, but when they're labeled with something like they're high functioning autism, they're going through identity crisis, they have social anxiety, they have ADHD, we're not asking all the questions. What medication can they take? We're not asking the questions. So let's start asking the questions. But then it's also not relying on the medical industry and the psychiatrists and everything, learning your child, whether they're a young child or an adult child, learning them, understanding them, shutting up and listening to them. Because we impact our children. And guess what? My show is almost over. So please reach out to me at sandeebyrdcoach@gmail.com, sandy@emotionalelevator.com. Come on any of my social media platforms. Let's have a conversation. But when I come back, I'll be doing another show next week on working in the workplace with all these challenges and how we as employers need to respond to these challenges. Because that's my next show. But when I come back from a well-deserved trip, spiritual trip, I will be putting out programs about unleashing your authentic self, forgiving yourself, letting go of all this false sense of security we have, letting go of these false beliefs. But it's time for my show to end tonight, and I'm hoping, and I know that I challenged some of you out there with speaking about empowering children through their challenges, but that's what we need to do. So thank you for joining me tonight.
Thank you for listening to the Emotional Elevator Show. Sandee returns Wednesdays at 7 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Central, 5 p.m. Mountain, 4 p.m. Pacific on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com. Until then, start elevating your emotions and stop riding the emotional elevator that is stopping you from living the life you deserve.